Hey, hey, say, hey. Says, hey, sound check, hey. Hey.
Deneme 1 2.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. That's not a very energetic start. Shall we be a bit more energetic? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Better, better. No clapping quite yet, Danilo. That's coming later. My name is Sue Nugas, and I'm from ACPI in the UK, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here to the 19th European Conference on Digital Government. And we're delighted to be here in northern Cyprus for the first time, and I'm sure we're going to have a great couple of days. I just want to go through one or two logistical things with you to make sure that you have a smooth ride through the next couple of days. Oh, that's good. That's gone all together. Can I have my slide up, please? Okay, and then we'll go one forward. Right, okay. So those of you who are presenting your research and have published papers in the conference proceedings, you were sent the link to download those proceedings, which I hope you've done. If you purchased a paper copy, you can collect that from me this morning. The proceedings are published with an ISSN and an ISBN, and they are submitted to a number of accreditation centres, including Scopus and Thomson ISI. That process takes a while, so it'll take a little while for the papers to be uploaded and indexed by them, but they'll get there eventually. You have a little booklet that you were given when you arrived this morning, and that has the abstracts of the papers, and that will help you decide which sessions you want to go to. There's also some note paper in the back of that booklet. Now, this is the auditorium where we will be for the keynotes today and tomorrow, but the rest of the conference is actually going to take place in a building across the way, in the same campus, but in a different building. So when we break up from here, some of the local people will guide us across. It's the big, attractive black building with lots of glass windows, and all the breakout sessions and everything else we do today will take place in that building. So with regards to timetable, I think Annette sent you a timetable out earlier this week, and we're not making any changes from that. I think everybody's going to be here, but in the unlikely event that we have a no-show, I'll try to alert the chair. But this is a special notice to the chair people. If somebody doesn't turn up, please don't move the next person into that position, because it's very annoying if you've decided which talks you want to go to and you run into a room to be told that they started that because the last person didn't turn up. So we don't want that. Just continue your discussion or break away and come back and carry on later. But hopefully that won't happen today. And as a reminder to everybody, we have 20 minutes for the presentations and 5 minutes for questions, and that leaves 5 minutes to change rooms. Now, because this is a very busy working university, it hasn't been possible to secure the same rooms for the same streams over the 2 days, so you will be moving around a lot. But the good news is that it's on the one floor in a couple of separate corridors, so we can't get too lost from that exercise. And once we've got our bearings in the other building, I'm sure we'll be fine. It does help everybody, though, if you are a presenting member of the group, that we've given you a lanyard with your name on it, that you wear that lanyard, because it helps identify you as a visitor to the university, so please keep that on at all times. The lunch will be served in a restaurant also on the campus, but in another building, so we'll gather in at the end of the sessions this morning and we'll go over to lunch together. The shuttle bus that brought everybody this morning will then return you to your hotel this afternoon, and then we will pick up again at 7 o'clock. A different bus will pick us all up and take us to dinner and bring us back again. So we're going to be well looked after and carried around. As it looks like it might rain, that's a particularly good thing, I think, today. There are a number of journals that will be considering papers from the conference. The Electronic Journal of E-Government is a journal that we publish, and we'll be considering papers to be further developed and published in that journal. And we also have the Journal of Information Communication and Ethics, and we have the Sustainability Journal as well. And I think Tugberg has also an arrangement with another publication too. So there's plenty of opportunity for work that's being published here to be further developed and find an outlet in a journal. So that's all I need to say to you this morning. I'm going to hand you over to Tugberg now, who will get the conference started properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunuguz. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the 19th European Conference on Digital Government. We would like to invite Conference Chair, Assistant Professor Dr. Tuğberk Kaya to the stage to deliver his speech.
Director, Vice Rector, Keynote, Directors of the Conference Company, distinguished guests, colleagues and participants. Welcome all to the 19th European Conference of Digital Government. Okay. Artificial intelligence, being agile, big data, Internet of Things, innovation, Industry 4.0, smart cities and virtual organizations. These are the concepts which change our life in every manner. And all of them have in common because they are triggered by digitalization. And when we look at the development of the services, we can analyze it by the market forces like supply and demand. And on the demand side, we have citizens. And by 2020, there will be more than 7 billion mobile users, which shows a tendency of being digital and being mobile. But unfortunately, the other side, the supply side, which are the decision makers, government officials, are not that much keen on digitalization. So we are telling that governments need to digitalize, and that was one of the main motivation why we organized this conference. It's not all sunshine and rainbows about digitalization. According to World Economic Forum Global Risk Report, managing technological disruption is one of the key areas that we need to struggle and work on. We have example of almost 90% of job losses due to automation, and much more will come. Therefore, we should digitalize our working force, digitalize our graduates, and also digital leadership is one of the key skills in upcoming years. I am rest assured that our honorary chair and keynote will be much more information about this. So I'm just keeping with publication opportunities. In addition to what you said, we have 2 Scopus, 1 Web of Science index publications, and 1 book will be coming as well. So you can be excited. This is a picture of our lovely institution. This is where we are now, and the sessions will be in this lovely building. And signs are provided within the building, so don't worry. You will find your way, and as Sue said, you have Wi-Fi connection there. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank you for your participation, and also I wish you have a fruitful conference. Thank you.
We would like to thank Conference Chair, Assistant Professor Dr. Tuğberk Kaya. Now, we would like to invite our dear Rector, Professor Dr. Halil Nadiri, to the stage to deliver his speech.
Okay, good morning for all. Actually, I did not make a presentation. I didn't prepare such a PowerPoint slide. Sorry about it. I'm going to have a kind of formal speech regarding the importance of this digital governance, as well as I try to use this opportunity to provide some more information about our university. So, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, dear students, as the Rector of Cyprus International University, I would like to welcome you all to the 19th European Conference on Digital Governance. Thank you. So it's a pleasure to organize such an important event here at Cyprus International University. I hope that this 2-day conference will provide a valuable platform for individuals to present their research findings, display their work in progress, and discuss conceptual and empirical advances in the areas of digital government. So Cyprus International University has a vision for the future, and we know that our future relies on the transformation to move forward. The digital platform is one of the biggest portions in the transformation of the systems, organizations, and within this e-government technology, which we'll be discussing today, entail the access and delivery of the government services, dissemination of information, and communication quickly and efficiently. In today's world, many industries have had to begin a transformation to adapt to the digital area. So higher education institutions are no exception. By using technology, Cyprus International University has improved its decision-making mechanism. The digital platform which we are using has promoted accurate decisions. Now we can make high-quality decisions based on digital analytics with low cost and faster than older formats. Additionally, at Cyprus International University, we are one of the first universities in North Cyprus who has started to use electronic document management system that help us to reduce less space to storage as well as to reduce costs, automating processes, increase document security, and minimizing the errors. Also, Cyprus International University has facilitated direct interaction with the students. The system we are using has many different platforms, such as the Student Information System. It enables students to register their courses online, make applications, make online payments, and see their timetables and much more. So I would like to say that this Student Information System developed by our own programmers. So with these online facilities, our students can become involved in their learning process. I would like to use this opportunity to say few words about our university as well. Cyprus International University has embodied three fundamental concepts, namely learning, research, and cultural blending that are identified as the indispensable characteristics of global institutions of higher learning. Currently, our university has been providing quality education through more than 200 undergraduate, master, and doctoral degree programs by means of 12 faculties and 8 schools. Cyprus International University is a very good model of internationalization. With the enrollment of our new students, CIU has now around 19,000 students from 110 different countries. With our prominent and experienced academicians, whose number is around 700 from 38 different countries, CIU has been providing its students with the opportunity to develop their knowledge in a multicultural environment. The university as a whole sees international accreditation as a basis of development. So Cyprus International University possesses full membership of various prominent academic organizations. It is also worth mentioning that the Cyprus International University's academic programs have the most prestigious accreditations in their field of study. With its multicultural structure formed by around 19,000 students from 110 different countries, and its educational model at international standards, which has gained the accreditation of the prominent international organizations, Cyprus International University is one of the most important institutions of higher education within the region. So before I end up my speech, I would like to thank the organizing committee for all of their tireless work and successful preparation. I would also like to thank all keynote speakers and participants from various universities and countries who are experts in their area of specialization, who, by coming here, have honored us and ensured the success of this event. I wish you all highly successful and enjoyable conference here at Cyprus International University, and I wish you a good time at this beautiful island. Thank you very much.
We would like to thank our Honorable Rector. I would like to present my invitation to the keynote speaker of the 19th European Conference on Digital Government, Professor Dr. Mete Yıldız, to deliver his keynote speech on what are the big questions for digital government research, a public administration perspective. I would like to share the resume of dear Professor Dr. Mete Yıldız. Mete Yıldız is a tenured professor of Public Administration and Policy in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration at Hacettepe University, Ankara, Turkey. He received his PhD from Indiana University, Bloomington's School of Public and Environmental Affairs in 2004. Among the topics he studies and publishes on are government reform, e-government, public policy, local governments, and comparative public administration. He recently served as a consultant to the Turkish government during the preparation of the National E-Government Strategy and Action Plan.
Good morning and welcome to the beautiful Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. I have seen better weather in Cyprus, but unfortunately today is not one of the best. So that's another reason to come again and enjoy the wonderful weather that we have in Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Before starting my keynote speech, I would like to thank for this organization, the rector, the vice rector, and the management of the Cyprus International University. Such a beautiful campus, very nice futuristic buildings. We really enjoy and will enjoy the settings. And thank you for your hospitality. I also would like to thank the organization, Professor Dan Remenyi, Sunugos, and many other supporting staff to make this happen. And it is a really an honor and a privilege for me to give this keynote speech today. My name is Mete Yıldız, as presented. I'm coming from Turkey, Hacettepe University in Ankara. And I have been studying issues regarding digital government and digital governance for the last 20 to 25 years, beginning from my graduate work in the United States, which was very interesting to me, and it is still interesting, but it's an evolving subject, as I will try to present. This way. There is a short bio about me, but it has already been presented. What I can emphasize is that digital government is not a standalone subject, but it has to be studied with other issues like government reform, the revision of public policies, reorganization of government departments, and it has to be comparative, as I will mention in a couple of minutes. So what can be the big questions of digital government research? Before that, I have to talk about the limitation of myself, which is I'm coming from a public administration and policy viewpoint, and this is a viewpoint that shapes how I look at digital government. But it is hardly the only viewpoint that you can understand digital government. There are many other viewpoints, like a more technical view is possible, sociological view is possible, legal views are possible, so that would be my limitation. So when I present my research questions, the big questions of digital government in a couple of minutes, please keep in mind that you can feel free to change it as you like according to your expertise, according to the area that you are looking to digital government research from. Where did these big questions come from? There was a seminal article published in 1995, which is entitled The Big Questions of Public Management Research, and it really started off a group of researchers think about the big questions in their respective fields. Why do we need big questions in digital government or in any other areas of research? Robert Band thinks that if an area of research claims that it's a discipline, we have to come up with big questions. It provides a discipline identity. The scholars who work in that discipline have to agree on those, mostly agree, let's say, on those big questions. Instead of being driven by methodology or current fads and fashions, being driven by big questions can be a better way to go, according to Robert Bann, who wrote this seminal article in 1995. But it wasn't the only production of this big question approach. There were other either articles in journals or book chapters on big questions. I have cited only a couple of those, and as you can see, there are big questions in public management, in non-profit organizations, so on and so forth. And in 2012, I thought that big questions for digital government research can be timely as well. So I wrote that article, which I will give information about a while later. So big questions help us think more generally about our area, ask more specific questions, more interesting questions, and maybe more importantly, it enables us to construct a research identity, a research community. It makes it easier to socialize into this research community, and we can, in this way, we can jointly come up with a research agenda that we can all share, where we are all interested in. So it is beneficial and helpful, I believe. So within this context, I came up with a couple of big questions for digital government research, but this was back in 2012. So today I will give you an updated version, and I urge you to come up with new questions that we can discuss, maybe in this panel, maybe in the coming panels in this conference. If you are interested in the whole journal article, here is the bibliographical information about the journal article, and I will be happy to provide you a PDF if you are interested. So without further ado, what are these big questions? Still a couple of slides to that. Do we really need big questions to think about in digital government research? We do, because different scholars identified different problems with either e-government, whatever you call it, or digital government research. Some argue that it's not explaining enough, it's not specific enough. Some argue that there aren't enough novel concepts, models, theories in digital government. It's heavily borrowing from other fields, but it's not producing its novel concepts, models, and theories. So there are a couple of problems associated with digital government research, and I believe one way to at least partially solve them is to come up with and discuss these big questions of digital government. So these were the original big questions that I posed a couple of years ago. And as I said before, if you are coming from, for example, an IS information science perspective, you can change the first question to information science. But this is my viewpoint, the public administration policy viewpoint, so bear that in mind. Let's look at these research questions one by one. The first one is, how can we better connect digital government, in my case, with mainstream public administration? It is kind of frustrating as a digital government scholar to see that the findings of research of digital government is not widely used by governments. So there seems to be a theoretical disconnect, and there seems to be a practical disconnect, meaning that there is a disconnect between scholars coming from social sciences, for example, and technical sciences, do not really talk to each other. They don't synergize as much as they need to do. That is the theoretical part. And the practical part, whatever we can find in our researches, studies, they are not being fully utilized by the government agencies. So to remedy these problems, one way to go is to better ground our studies in our respective fields. Let me give you a specific example from public administration. An important concept in public administration is street-level bureaucrats. And what it means is the bureaucrats, the public officials, who are in direct contact with citizens in implementing public policies. So if we are talking about education policies, street-level bureaucrats would be teachers and principals in schools. If we are talking about security policies and implementation of IT and security, we are talking about police officers and sometimes soldiers. So it is doctors, soldiers, police officers, teachers, whoever is getting in contact in implementing public policies. And public policies are using lots of technology these days, so it is a relevant concept in digital government research. Let me be more specific. Let's assume that you are a police officer and you are asked to use wearable technologies like a helmet camera or a body camera. Why are police officers are using these? There are many complaints about the use of force by the police. So if there will be a camera which is recording, it can be better checked if this use of force is asked for or it is excessive or not. There are also privacy concerns with this use of body cameras, and it is a good idea to look at the concepts built around the concept of street-level bureaucrats regarding how to overcome those implementation problems, how to use these wearable technologies better and violating ethics less. It can help us to understand and discuss those issues. A second question, I guess, is shared by many other areas as well, how to make our research domain more comparative and multidisciplinary. This seems easy enough since digital government by definition is multidisciplinary. It's not just politics, it's not just public or business administration. There are legal sides to it, there are technical sides to it, there are even sociological or psychological aspects to it. But it is easier said than done. It's about the deficits of theoretical deficit, the practical deficit that I talked about. And there's a lot of duplication in research because of that. We are doing the same things again and again. I'm doing it in public administration, another person is doing it in information studies. But if we could have worked together in the beginning, if we could have joined forces, it would be much easier. We could have used less resources, and probably we could have come with better solutions to our problems as well. It also weakens our ability to generalize our findings, which is a reason why the government agencies are not listening hard enough to what has been found in digital government research. So coordination seems to be the key factor, or lack of coordination, if you will, among the researchers and between the researchers and government entities. What would be an example to that, to multidisciplinary arguments? I guess an area which is underused, undertapped so far is organizational theory. Organizational theory is associated with business administration, public administration, and the related fields, but there are lots of concepts that we can utilize taken from organizational theory and applied to digital government research. Some of these concepts, as you can see, are legitimacy of organizations or units within organizations, stability and survival of the organizations. We are inclined to tell the digital government story from a very rational point of view, but sometimes both people and organizations do irrational things. And to understand those irrational looking things and explain them, organizational theory gives us some hints regarding how to proceed. A third question, again, a common question in many fields, is how to evaluate and measure the performance and results of digital government projects. This is a very important question because most digital government projects are funded by the public purse, by our money, and we are not sure how successful they are. There is a leading scholar in digital government studies. His name is Richard Hicks. He is from University of Manchester in UK, and he argued that the amount of successful projects in digital government is just 15%. So it is just 3 projects within 20 projects is successful. He says that there are partially successful projects, which is about 50%, which may not be good enough. Partially successful means also partial failure. And maybe more severely, 35%, the remaining 35% of the projects are total failures. How many of us accept 35% of failure when someone else is spending our money? So there are 2 ways to go. Either we can better measure and evaluate these projects and then make the necessary changes within them, or we can change the funding system, which is an altogether different argument to make. We can fund by sponsorships, by advertisements, cross-funding, so on and so forth, but that's a subject that I will not be discussing today. I would rather focus on the evaluation part. It is important because if we can evaluate it better, we can use less resources, obviously, but we can make the necessary changes to make these projects better work for our daily problems, solve our daily problems. This is an issue that is a very contested issue because most of us look at international benchmarking reports to understand if a country or certain projects are successful or if they failed or not. However, when we look at the digital government literature, there are lots of questions about benchmarking efforts. A specific person, let me cite a specific person, Frank Bannister, a distinguished scholar from Trinity College, says that benchmarking studies are quite flawed studies. They are problematic, they are not evaluating the things that they argue that they do, and more importantly, when these flawed studies are published and taken as a measurement by governments, the governments are guided to do the wrong things. They will do the things that will increase their ranking in the benchmark studies, and those things that they do, the governments do, are not necessarily the things that help the local governments, the central governments, or the citizens. So there's a gap between what is being measured and what is really happening in the field. So my argument would be the main actor to objectively measure these successes or failures or semi-failures, semi-successes would be more academic, government, rather than international bodies, benchmarking studies, think tanks, NGOs. Some argue that there is a gray literature. It is not fully academic, this gray literature. It is not fully practical, but as I will mention, this gray literature coming from think tanks and international organizations is shaping the studies that we conduct. Which brings me to my 4th and last question, or big question of digital government. How to come up with more new and interesting concepts, models, theories of digital government. As I mentioned, digital government is heavily borrowing these concepts and models and theories from other disciplines, from IS, information science, from business administration, so on and so forth. But it is almost a theoretical area. It's not producing any new concepts. So what can be done about it? Of course, we have to do lots of field work. That's where the concepts are coming from. We see something in the field work, and it's not being explained by the concepts that we already have, so we'd come up with a new concept. So what would be a good example to this argument? The lack of these concepts and constructs decreases the legitimacy of the field as well. Some argue that digital government is losing its strength as a field of study, an argument that I would disagree. So one example that I can give regarding new concepts, models, and theories that come from digital government research would be the changing role of citizens in digital government. In the past, the citizens were more passive, recipients of public services and information, but we are seeing a revival of citizenry. They are being more active, and social media helps, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, new ways of doing things, new technologies are helping, enabling citizens to be more active. As you know, we have certain old categories of e-government interaction in digital government literature, which the basic ones are government to government. For example, when two government agencies share some data for some services. It can be government to businesses, bids and tenders, for example, or government to citizen. If you'd like to pay a fine, a tax, or something to the government, that would be a government to citizen interaction. But in this old categories, traditional categories, they are defined by the actors of what's going on. One side is government, the other side is either a government, a citizen, or a business. Why not come up with a new category of e-government, digital government, which is citizen to citizen? What happens if when there's an earthquake and you see someone in the rubble but no other person sees it? You see that a certain amount of people are under the rubble of a building after an earthquake, and it may be a citizen to citizen contact that will, for example, from social media, you can tell someone else, and he or she tells someone else. And at the end of this, if you may call it an e-government value chain, you can come up with a government agency which can help you, help those people, or it can be an NGO depending on the situation. But we see more of this citizen-to-citizen interactions in digital government, and I believe we'll be discussing this in the coming years as a different e-government interaction category. When I published this article a couple of years ago, I was not content. This shouldn't be the only questions that we should discuss. So I asked other colleagues from email lists about digital government, LinkedIn groups, and I asked them if they agree with me, if they think that big questions matter, if they do, if they think that big questions are important, if they agree that these are the big questions of digital government research, which questions they would like to add. And 33 of them responded to my emails and queries. And some of them come up with new questions. An interesting question that they came up with was how to use digital government or ICTs for development. This is a very relevant question, a very useful question, especially for the underdeveloped or developing countries in the world. and it spans lots of topics like earthquake mitigation, the example that I have given. It includes what some experts call pre-poor e-government, how digital government studies can help poor people. It includes topics such as digital divides, and the divide between regions, groups of people, so on and so forth. So it's a good idea to add this question, I guess. How can we use digital government studies to increase development, not just technical development, not just economic development, but human development as well? Of course, as you may be thinking about right now, a bigger question, if we are talking about development and survival, a bigger question is the future of our planet. What's happening right now regarding global warming and all the catastrophes that we are facing in the world? How can digital government and digitalization help us to save this planet? How can it help us to create a similar order in other planets, habitable planets like Mars? So these are the questions that we may ask ourselves in the coming years, the big questions of humanity within the context of big questions of digital government. Some other questions that came from colleagues from email lists. One of them, interesting one, I believe, is let's develop a set of principles regarding e-government, or a knowledge tree, so that there will be less duplication and more synthesis of what's going on. This evidence-based principles, when you think about it, how many principles are there in the digital government research? One very widely known principle is called once only principle. And it means that if you are dealing with government by using technology, the same information is asked only once from you. Your name, surname, citizen identification number, date of birth, so on and so forth. It is a basic principle. It is simple enough. Is it being applied? Not in Turkey, not in many countries, unfortunately. So it is important to come up with principles, but it is more important to implement them properly. What can be the big questions for the coming 5-10 years? Of course, we can cite lots of new technologies, lots of new ways of doing things. The obvious ones are big data, open government, Internet of Things, wearable technologies, so on and so forth. And we have, as new ways of doing things, we have things like crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, so on and so forth. And we have robotics, AI, some more things are coming up that we are not aware of yet. So how to integrate all these things to our researches in digital government? That would be a challenge up to you, the upcoming scholars on this field, if you insist on pursuing this area of research. And there were some criticisms as well to the big questions approach. Some argued that basically the academics are not knowledgeable enough to say something about digital government. They are far too behind. So we have to ask the real group that we need to ask what these big questions are, the practitioners. They know the latest, the most important developments in digital government. My take on this criticism would be accepting half of it. Yes, some scholars are behind, but a better way is to cooperate more with practitioners. Another criticism is digital government or e-government is not relevant anymore. We are talking with other concepts. We are not talking about government, for example. We are talking about governance. We are not talking about digital government. We are talking about a digital transformation or any other new concept or fad or fashion that you fancy. I think that criticism bears some truth to it. The name can change, but the use of technology in government to provide service and information, I don't think that changed that much. The technology changes, the main objectives do not change that much. So that is a half-true criticism from my perspective. And a last perspective is a fair criticism, I think. The best way to ground digital government research is not public administration. And if you remember, that was not my argument in the first place as well. It is not the only place, but this is, public administration is one of the important places to ground digital government research. Why? Because we are trying to transform government. At the end of the day, if the government doesn't change, just the technology changes, that will be, I guess, not a complete success from an e-government perspective. So how to proceed from this point on? If you are interested in big government, big questions of digital government research, and if you think that it's worth the effort to come up with new big questions, I urge you, the people in this crowd, for example, to come up with a special issue in a digital government journal that discusses what can be the big questions of digital government research for the last 5 to 10 years. Another way to go is to discuss it some more in email lists, WhatsApp lists, Facebook lists, whichever one that you are involved in. So we can come up with more novel concepts and more novel questions regarding digital government. And one final thought about our interactions regarding digital government. I've been going to lots of conferences in which these issues are being discussed. I have been to this conference before, European Conference of Digital Government. I have been to ECPA conferences, European Group of Public Administration, in which digital government is an important issue. I have been to technical conferences, I've been to social science conferences. Something that I recognized in all of them, that people from different surroundings, different disciplines, don't talk too much, don't synergize as much as they need to do. I'm hoping that this conference would be a new beginning. We'll try to talk some more from different perspectives, enrich ourselves, and hopefully we can come up with new, interesting, big questions of digital government research. Thank you very much for listening, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
We would like to thank Professor Dr. Mete Yıldız for his keynote presentation. I would like to invite on the stage our Vice Rector, Associated Professor Dr. Mehmet Oycan, to present a plaque of appreciation to the Honorable Professor Dr. Mete Yıldız.
Sorry, I forgot to ask if you'd like to ask any questions regarding big questions. If we have time, do we have time? Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you, Professor Yıldız. My name is Danilo Piaggesi. I'm a Managing Director of NGO K4D in Special and Consultative Status with United Nations. What's your opinion on the role of blockchain in the digital government research?
And that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. It's one of the emerging technologies that we can integrate into governments, but the problem is we have to do it by a trial and error method. One example that I can think of is the use of blockchain in notary publics, in the notary business. And the problem with it is there's a strong resistance in many areas that if we integrate it to notary publics or any other areas, people will going to lose jobs. So it is almost like an industrial revolution, Luddite experience. Some other applications that I've heard of, blockchain technology, is the organization and of refugees in Jordan, I believe. They are organizing their data about refugees by using blockchain technology, and I believe we'll see more and more examples to that. But as I said, it's a trial and error, so we're going to see the risks and benefits only after implementation. Thank you. Yes.
My name is Mary Agoy. Thank you for your presentation. You talked on the relationship of government to citizens, government to business, and government to government. And you are proposing that there will be a relationship of citizen to citizen. For these three parameters, what do you think their relationship will be with government to non-citizen, non-citizens to business, or non-citizen to citizen? Do you think there can be any possible relationship between these parameters?
That's an interesting question. Thank you. In Turkey, I can give an example from Turkey. That's the example that I'm more familiar with. And in Turkey, we have government to citizen information and services being provided by either the local government or central government of Turkey. And as you know, we have 4 to 5 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. Most of them are not citizens, but both the local governments and the central government is providing certain information and services by using certain technologies to them. So there is your government to non-citizen category. In fact, we can subdivide it to government to legal non-citizen versus government to illegal non-citizen categories. So it may be an important concept to think about and do research. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Mustafa Sasan, thank you so much for letting us refreshing our information and knowledge on electronic and digital government. My focus will be address your second questions about evaluating the digital government based on either multidisciplinary perspective or interdisciplinary perspectives. I think there is a big gap on this issue by considering it from the philosophical debate. Is it coming from the postmodern paradigms or positivist paradigm? We should concentrate. Because I don't think so that the electronic government studies have already completed its process. Then we rapidly give up using the electronic instead of digital. So I think that's the paradigmatic contradictory in the literature that we should evaluate. That was my first queries about giving some information from you. And the second is about you haven't used the knowledge management discipline. What I strongly believe that is very close to digital or electronic government studies. Did you deliberately get rid of, or you want to say something on this issue? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question and comments. Of course, knowledge management, I also believe that knowledge management is part of digital government studies, and an important part of it, and omitting it in my speech was my fault, I guess. Otherwise, I believe that it is an important part. especially the tacit knowledge of digital government studies is buried in the scholars and the retired civil servants. We haven't make it explicit, so we cannot use it. So that would be a good example of how knowledge management relates to digital government. I agree with you on that. I don't see too much post-positivist arguments in the digital government literature that I'm seeing, and my emphasis on organizational theory, especially institutional theory of organizations, was kind of a signal in the same direction in that, and I would like to see more of it in the future. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Professor Remanier, then the gentleman.
There are many issues that you raised that I'd like to ask and to talk about, but the one that strikes me as being really quite important is to think a bit about the boundaries between fields of study and disciplines. I mean, I was surprised when you talked about citizen to citizen being a topic which was suitable for digital government, because I see what citizens do and how they interrelate with each other as being in a different field. But now you've made it even more interesting by bringing in knowledge management. I mean, knowledge management doesn't seem to me to be a subset of digital government. How do you see it?
Thank you for the question. I agree with you that if it stays between citizens, it may not be the affairs of the government mostly, but I see it as a value chain. It begins with a citizen-to-citizen interaction, but it doesn't end there. It connects to a government agency. It's almost like a chemical reaction. Let's say citizens are hydrogen, then we are adding some oxygen, some carbon, and at the end we are linking it to a government or NGO. Regarding your second question, you said that knowledge management is a subcategory in digital government.
No, I think you said that.
If I said that, sorry, I didn't want to say it in the first place. It's an area that we can benefit from the findings of it or from the concepts of it. But it is, I don't think it's a subcategory of digital government. I misrepresented myself.
I was just a little bit worried because there are certain people who feel that government is getting too big and is extending its tentacles into every aspect of our lives. And maybe that is the case, and maybe the digital revolution is helping that. Is that a good thing? I don't know.
Well, if it is in China, if it is giving a point to every citizen if they behave well and take it out from their point, if they they jaywalk, it's not good. But if it is used for democratic purposes, for providing services in a better way, in a cheaper way, I guess it may be good, depending on the use. One last question or none? We are out of time, sorry, there's a sign saying that. But I will be happy to answer any questions in one-on-one format. Thank you again.
The opening ceremony and first day keynote presentation of the 19th European Conference on Digital Government has been completed. We wish to have a fruitful conference. Thank you.